In the darkness between stars, where hope dies and faith corrodes, there are places the Imperium does not speak of. Prisons, not places of rehabilitation or mercy, but cathedrals of suffering, where souls are broken, remade, or consumed. In the grim darkness of the far future, guilt is eternal, punishment is divine, and freedom is the ultimate heresy. The first truth: you do not leave. Kyvos-VII turns slowly beneath a dying red sun. From orbit, it resembles a rusted nail driven through the fabric of reality. No forests, no oceans. Only black stone mountains carved into fortresses, each one a prison stretching kilometers into the earth. Millions labor here. Murderers, traitors, heretics, the innocent who whispered the wrong name in their sleep. The distinction ceased to matter generations ago. Kyvos-VII does not care why you arrived, only that you remain, forever. Inside the primary detention complex, iron corridors stretch endlessly, lit by flickering luminators that cast shadows like broken teeth. The air tastes of rust and human waste. Vox speakers mounted to the ceiling recite scripture without pause, an endless litany praising the God Emperor's justice. Prisoners shuffle in chains, heads bowed, faces hollow. Some have been here 30 years, others 300. Time loses meaning when every day is identical. Wake, labor, sleep, repeat. The weak collapse, the strong endure. Neither escapes. Punishment in the Imperium is not designed to reform. It exists to extract value from the worthless, to sanctify suffering, to transform sin into service. A criminal on a hive world who steals food to survive does not receive a trial or counseling. They receive a number, a destination, and a lifetime of atonement. The administratum views them as resources, flesh to be expended, blood to be spent, bones to ground into servitor components when death finally arrives. On mining worlds like Kyvos-VII, prisoners excavate promethium deposits with handheld drills, working 18-hour shifts in tunnels that collapse without warning. Overseers, brutal men wearing the aquila and wielding shock mauls, patrol the darkness, dispensing violence for infractions real or imagined. Speak without permission, 20 lashes. Fail to meet your quota, reduced rations for a week. Attempt escape, public execution, your body left hanging in the central yard as a reminder. There is no appeal, no parole, only service until death. Redemption exists, though few achieve it. The Astra Militarum maintains penal legions, regiments composed entirely of condemned criminals. Given a singular opportunity, die gloriously for the Emperor, and perhaps your soul might be forgiven. They are sent to the worst war zones. Suicide missions against orc hordes, frontal assaults on chaos-held fortresses, human minesweepers advancing across fields laced with explosives. Their equipment is substandard, their officers view them as expendable, and survival is statistically impossible. Yet they march, because death in battle offers something prison cannot: meaning. A heretic who dies charging a chaos sorcerer achieves martyrdom. A thief who holds the line against Tyranid swarms becomes a hero. Their names are recorded in regimental logs, spoken during evening prayers, remembered for a brief moment before being forgotten. It is a transaction, life for absolution, blood for grace. Most die within weeks. The survivors, traumatized and scarred, are granted new crimes and return to the front. Redemption is never complete. Suffering is eternal. Labor camps dot 1,000 worlds, each one a monument to humanity's industrialized cruelty. On factory planets, prisoners assemble munitions in toxic environments, their lungs blackening from chemical exposure, their hands mangled by machinery designed without safety mechanisms. They work until they collapse, then are dragged away and replaced. On agri-worlds, they harvest crops beneath blistering suns, backs breaking under loads no human should carry. On forge worlds, they shovel coal into furnaces that burn at temperatures capable of melting bone, their screams drowned by the roar of industry. The Mechanicus run some facilities. Their prisons are stranger, Vast halls where prisoners are surgically modified, augmented with crude bionics, transformed into half-living tools. Free will is removed. Identity is deleted. What remains is a thing that obeys perfectly, feels nothing, and serves until its organic components fail. The tech priests call this mercy. A body repurposed is a soul saved from damnation. The prisoners, unable to scream, cannot object. Then there are the prisons the Inquisition operates. Black sites hidden in asteroid fields, beneath ocean trenches, inside hollowed-out moons. These facilities do not process common criminals. They contain individuals who know too much, witnesses to demonic incursions, survivors of Xenos contact, scribes who read forbidden texts. The Inquisition cannot kill them outright. Their knowledge may prove useful. Instead, they are stored, frozen in stasis, or locked in sensory deprivation chambers, minds slowly unraveling across decades. Interrogation here is not about confession. It is archaeology, extracting memories, cataloging thoughts, determining what must be purged and what might be weaponized. Subjects are exposed to psychic probes that peel back consciousness like layers of skin. Some go mad immediately. Others fragment slowly, their identities dissolving until nothing remains but screaming instinct. When the Inquisition finishes, when every secret has been harvested, the prisoner is either lobotomized or incinerated. There are no trials, no witnesses, only silence. The psychological dimension of imprisonment in the 40K universe transcends physical suffering. Prisoners know they are forgotten. The Imperium contains quadrillions of souls across 1 million worlds, and one individual's torment barely registers as a statistical footnote. Letters are not sent. Families are not notified. Your existence becomes a bureaucratic error that continues indefinitely. You are not punished for what you did. You are punished because the system requires someone to suffer, and you were available. Hope is the first casualty, then dignity, then sanity. Prisoners develop strange rituals to preserve identity, carving marks into walls, memorizing prayers, clinging to fragments of their previous lives. But the environment corrodes these efforts. Isolation breaks social bonds. Malnutrition dulls cognition. Violence breeds paranoia. Eventually, you forget who you were. You become your number, your cell, your suffering. You become what they always said you were, nothing. In one cell on Kyvos-VII, a man sits motionless. His name is irrelevant, he forgot it 12 years ago. His crime, questioning a Departmental Minatorum tax assessment. A minor transgression, easily overlooked. But the bureaucrat he questioned held a grudge, and in the Imperium, grudges have weight. Now he mines, every day, every night. His hands are gnarled claws, fingers bent permanently from gripping the drill. His back curves forward, spine compressed from years hunched in tunnels barely tall enough to crawl through. Sometimes, late in the darkness between shifts, he allows himself a thought. Was there a family once? Children, perhaps. A wife. He cannot remember faces, cannot recall names. Only sensations remain: warmth, laughter, the smell of cooking food. These fragments torture him more than the overseer's mauls. They prove something existed before this, something lost, something stolen. He closes his eyes and returns to the tunnels. It is easier than remembering. The Ecclesiarchy justifies it all theologically. Suffering purifies the soul. Pain brings enlightenment. Through agony, one grows closer to the Emperor's divine understanding. Cardinals preach this from golden pulpits to congregations that will never see a prison, will never know the cold metal taste of starvation, will never hear their own bones crack under forced labor. To them, prisons are necessary, even sacred, mechanisms through which the unclean are sanctified, the heretical are redeemed, and the corrupt are rendered useful. But beneath the theology, beneath the scripture and ritual, lies a simpler truth. The Imperium runs on fear. And prisons are where fear is manufactured, where citizens learn what happens when you question, disobey, or simply exist inconveniently. Every prisoner is a lesson. Every scream is a sermon. The message is clear and eternal: obey or be consumed. Then, deep within Kyvos-VII's lowest sublevel, something changes. A prisoner, no name, only a number, discovers an anomaly while mining, a chamber that should not exist. Ancient, predating Imperial occupation. Inside, carvings cover the walls. Not Gothic script, not human at all, Xenos, or something older. The prisoner stares, transfixed, as the patterns seem to move in the dim light, rearranging themselves into symbols that hurt to perceive. He feels something watching, waiting, and in that terrible moment, he understands. The prison was not built to contain criminals. It was built to contain something else. The prisoner's hands tremble as he touches the wall, cold, impossibly smooth. The carvings pulse with faint bioluminescence, colors that should not exist, geometries that violate sanity. Behind him, the tunnel stretches back toward the prison proper, toward chains and scripture, and the familiar brutality of Imperial law. Before him, the chamber descends deeper, into darkness older than the Imperium itself. He knows what he should do. Report this to the overseers. Alert the authorities. Instead, he steps forward, drawn by something he cannot name: curiosity, desperation, or perhaps the simple, terrible hope that anything, even the unknown, is better than what he has endured. The darkness swallows him. Above, in the administrative levels, servitor alarms trigger silently. Someone is watching. Someone has always been watching. Warden Commander Grell stands in his sanctum, eyes fixed on pick screens displaying thermal scans of sub-level Epsilon 9, red. Signatures bloom where they should not exist. Heat sources in sealed sectors. Movement in chambers marked as structurally compromised for 2 centuries. His augmetic eye clicks and whirs, zooming, analyzing. The patterns make no sense, unless his hand moves to the Voxcaster. Seals sub-level Epsilon. Full quarantine protocol. No one enters or leaves. The response crackles back. My lord, there are 3,000 prisoners currently working that sector. Grell's expression does not change. Seal it. He has served the Imperium 47 years. He knows what Xenos contamination looks like. Knows what happens when ancient things wake. 3,000 lives are nothing compared to what could spread if containment fails. The Emperor protects through sacrifice. Always through sacrifice. In the tunnels, other prisoners notice the anomaly. Word spreads in whispers, carried through the mining networks like a virus. A door. A way out. A place the guards have not found. Desperation is a contagion more virulent than any plague, and in Kyvos-VII, every soul is infected. Groups begin to move, abandoning work details, flowing towards sub-level Epsilon 9 like blood toward an open wound. Overseers activate shock malls, shouting orders, but there are too many. The prisoners have nothing left to lose, no future to preserve, no hope to protect. They surge forward in a wave of emaciated bodies and fevered eyes, trampling those who fall, driven by the primal need for anything different than this endless, grinding existence. They do not know what they are running toward, only what they are running from. Father Cassius, an Ecclesiarchy confessor assigned to Kyvos-VII, receives the alert in his chapel cell. He is old, hunched, face a roadmap of scars earned during crusades on a dozen worlds. His faith is absolute, tested by fire and horror and still unbroken. But lately, he has heard things. Whispers in the ventilation shafts, prayers spoken backward in the night, dreams of stars that burn cold. He dismissed them as manifestations of prisoner madness, environmental psychosis induced by isolation and malnutrition. Now reading Grell's quarantine order, understanding blooms like poison in his mind. This prison, built on pre-Imperial foundations, constructed over ruins that predated human settlement. They told him it was strategic positioning, optimal mineral deposits. But what if the location was chosen for different reasons? What if Kyvos-VII was not built to imprison humans, but to guard something buried beneath? The first prisoners reach the chamber. They spill into the ancient space, torchlight sweeping across walls covered in Xenotech script, illuminating architecture that defies human engineering, angles that hurt to perceive, doorways that seem to shift when viewed peripherally. Some laugh, hysterical with relief at finding anything new. Others weep, overwhelmed by the scale of it. A woman, imprisoned 15 years for harboring an unsanctioned psyker child, approaches the central structure, a monolith of black stone inscribed with spiraling patterns. She reaches out. The moment her fingers make contact, the patterns ignite, flooding the chamber with light that is not light, but something deeper, something that bypasses the eyes and burns directly into the mind. She screams. Others scream. The walls begin to hum, a frequency felt in bones and teeth, resonating through flesh and metal alike. On the command deck, Warden Commander Grell watches his screens dissolve into static. Vox channels erupt with overlapping transmissions, prisoners screaming, overseers calling for backup, automated systems reporting catastrophic structural failures across multiple sectors. Then silence, complete, absolute. Even the environmental systems pause, as if the prison itself is holding its breath. Grell knows this silence. Has heard it before on battlefields where demons walked, in hive sectors consumed by genostealer cults. It is the silence before reality tears. He reaches for the astropathic relay, fingers moving with practiced precision. The message he composes is brief. Kyvos-VII compromised. Recommend exterminatus. He does not expect a response in time, does not expect to survive what comes next. But duty demands he try. The Emperor judges by intention, not outcome. Father Cassius descends towards sub-level Epsilon, Rosarius clutched in gnarled hands, lips moving in constant prayer. Behind him, 12 Militarum guards follow, lasguns charged, faces pale beneath helmets. They pass through checkpoints now unmanned, through corridors slick with something that might be water or might be organic secretion. The temperature drops. Breath mists. One guard stops, pointing at the wall. Scratches, fresh. Not made by tools, but by fingernails. By hands clawing at metal until skin and bone gave way. The scratches form words in Gothic. It sees you. S. It has always seen you. Cassius does not pause. Cannot pause. If Xeno's corruption has taken root here, if something ancient and malevolent has woken, then it must be confronted with faith and fire. His order carries no army, no battle sisters or space marines, only an old priest and frightened soldiers. It will have to be enough. In the chamber, transformation occurs. Prisoners collapse, convulsing, bodies changing in ways biology should not permit. Skin hardens into chitinous plates. Limbs elongate, joints reversing, fingers fusing into bladed appendages. But these are not mutations of chaos. No marks of the ruinous powers manifest. This is something older. Something that existed before the warp was sundered, before humanity spread among the stars. The woman who touched the monolith stands at the center, no longer screaming. Her eyes glow with bioluminescent radiance, and when she speaks, her voice carries harmonics that shatter luminators and crack stone. We were buried, forgotten. You built your prison atop our tomb and called it justice. Now we reclaim what was stolen. Now we wake. The remaining unchanged prisoners flee, scrambling toward exits that seal behind them. Automated protocols activating, trapping them with the horrors they unleashed. The administrative facility on Kyvos-VII orbits 300 kilometers above the surface, a vast station housing bureaucrats, logistics officers, and the machinery of Imperial governance. Here, far from the stench and suffering below, clerks process reports and balance ledgers and never think about the human cost of their efficiency. Senior Adept Vornis reviews the day's production quotas when the alert arrives. Quarantine, possible xenoform incursion. His first thought is not of the prisoners or guards trapped below, but of the ore shipments. If Kyvos-VII goes offline, 17 Forge worlds will experience supply delays, affecting munitions production for 3 subsectors. The strategic implications are catastrophic. He drafts a memorandum to the Departamento Munitorum, outlining contingency supply chains, alternative mining operations. The memo never mentions the 3 million souls on Kyvos-VII. They are statistics, expendable, already dead in every calculation that matters. Father Cassius reaches the chamber as the last transformation completes. What stands before him defies classification. Organisms that blend technology and biology so seamlessly that no distinction exists. They move with synchronized precision, no longer individuals, but components of a single vast intelligence distributed across multiple forms. The priest raises his rosarius, and holy light blazes forth, striking the nearest creature. It pauses, cocks its head, then continues forward. Faith, for once, is insufficient. The guards open fire, last bolts searing through air and flesh, but the creatures regenerate, wounded tissue knitting instantly. Cassius realizes the truth then, in that final terrible moment. This is not invasion. This is reclamation. Humanity built an empire on 10,000 conquered worlds, never asking what came before, never questioning why some planets bore ruins older than recorded history. Kyvos-VII was never empty, never uninhabited. The Xenos were here first, buried in hibernation, waiting. And the Imperium, in its arrogance, built a prison atop their sleeping forms. He laughs, bitter and broken, as the creatures close in. "We are the criminals here," he whispers. Then there is only darkness. The orbital station trembles, not from weapons or impact, but from something beneath, vibrations rising through the planet's crust, resonating through the void itself. Senior Adept Vornas watches his screens die, one by one, as power surges cascade through the facility's ancient systems. The younger clerks panic, abandoning their stations, but Vornas remains seated. He has served the administratum for 63 years, processed casualty reports from 100 war zones, signed death warrants for millions without hesitation. Numbers do not frighten him. But as the final screen flickers and dies, as emergency lighting bathes the chamber in crimson, he feels something he has not experienced since childhood: genuine terror. Because in that last moment before darkness, the thermal imaging showed something impossible. The entire planet, all of Kyvos-VII, pulsing with synchronized biosignatures. 3 million prisoners and guards, moving as one organism. The prison is no longer a prison. It is a chrysalis, and something is being born. Astropath Suriel screams in her isolation chamber, hands clawing at the psychic dampeners welded to her skull. She has touched the warp 10,000 times, navigated its currents, translated messages across light years of impossible space. But this is different. This signal comes not from the immaterium, but from reality itself, from matter and thought fused into something that should not exist. She sees through eyes that are not hers, prisoners transforming, guards consumed, the entire prison complex restructuring at a cellular level. Flesh becomes architecture, bone becomes circuitry. The Xenos are not invading. They are integrating, absorbing humanity's genetic patterns, learning from captured minds. They have been buried for eons, studying their captors through the prison built above them, understanding Imperial psychology, theology, weakness. And now they know humanity better than humanity knows itself. Suriel's final thought before her mind shatters completely: they have been patient. In the sub-temples of the Ecclesiarchy Cathedral, 3 sectors removed from Kyvos-VII, Canoness Varia kneels before the golden Aquila. She has prayed here every dawn for 30 years, ritual as unchanging as the stars. Her faith is absolute. Tested by war against orcs, purges of heretics, the slow grinding horror of maintaining belief in a galaxy designed to destroy it. Yet today, the words catch in her throat. Reports arrived an hour ago. Kyvos-VII silent, no vox, no astrotelepathy, just void. Standard protocol dictates she alert the sector fleet, initiate investigation. But something stops her. She thinks of the prisoners. 3 million souls, most guilty only of poverty or misfortune, condemned to lifetimes of suffering in the Emperor's name. Justice, they called it. Divine punishment. But kneeling here, alone in the candlelit darkness, Canoness Varia permits herself a heretical question. What if the Emperor does not hear prayers spoken in prisons? What if suffering, vast and systematic, is not holy but simply cruel? She rises, joints aching, faith trembling. The question will not leave. The infection spreads through information, not biology. On the orbital station, a single clerk escapes in a savior pod before quarantine completes. He carries data slates containing thermal scans, biological readings, fragments of what transpired below. The pod is recovered by a merchant vessel, the Endless Prophet, captained by a woman who trades in secrets as often as goods. She reads the reports, recognizes their value, and transmits copies to contacts across 3 subsectors before authorities can intervene. Within days, the story metastasizes. A prison world gone silent, Xenos awakening, Imperial forces consumed. Vox channels buzz with speculation. Was Kyvos-VII built on Xenos ruins? How many other prison worlds rest atop forgotten tombs? Conspiracy theories flourish. Faith begins to crack. Because if the Imperium built prisons on alien graves without knowing, what else has been overlooked? What other foundations are rotten? On a Forge world, Tech Priest Daumer pauses mid-calculation, considering. On a Hive world, Governor Renth questions his tithes. Doubt, that most dangerous contagion, begins its inexorable spread. The Inquisition responds with characteristic brutality. Inquisitor Kyvos-VII, Ordo Xenos, arrives in the Kyvos system aboard the strike cruiser Absolute Sanction, with orders to contain, investigate, and if necessary, initiate exterminatus. His retinue includes 2 Death Watch kill teams, a company of Tempestus Scions, and 6 battle sisters from the Order of the Ebon Chalice. They descend toward Kyvos-VII in silence, drop pods screaming through atmosphere toward a world that no longer resembles Imperial records. The prison complexes have changed. Towers have grown, organic and metallic simultaneously, reaching toward the sky like fingers clawing free of a grave. Structures pulse with bioluminescence and patterns that hurt to observe. As Kyvos-VII's pod impacts, crashing through the outer wall of the primary detention center, he sees prisoners. Still human, mostly, but changed. Eyes reflecting light like animals. Skin bearing faint geometric patterns. They do not attack, they watch. And Kyvos-VIII, veteran of a dozen Xenocide campaigns, feels something he thought purged from his soul: uncertainty. Inside the complex, Sister Marin advances with bolter raised, finger hovering over the trigger. The corridors are wrong. Walls bend at angles architecture should not permit. Gravity fluctuates, pulling sideways then down then up. Her sisters move in tight formation, hymns spoken under breath, faith a shield against the wrongness saturating this place. They find the first bodies in what was once a prayer hall. Guards, overseers, all dead but unmarked. No wounds, no signs of violence. They simply stopped, as if their souls departed mid-step. Sister Marin kneels beside one, checks for vitals. Nothing, but the flesh is warm. Recently alive. She closes the corpse's eyes, whispers a prayer for the dead, then freezes. The prayer. She cannot remember the words. Has recited them 10,000 times, muscle memory deeper than thought, yet now they are gone. Erased. She looks at her sisters, sees identical confusion. Something here is editing reality, removing faith at its foundation. Her hand tightens on the bolter. If they cannot pray, what remains? Inquisitor Kyvos-VIII reaches the central monolith, the Xenotech structure that started the awakening. It towers above him, black stone inscribed with spiraling patterns that move when observed peripherally. The prisoners, or what they are becoming, form a circle around it, unmoving, eyes fixed on something beyond perception. Koravik activates his psychic hood, extending his consciousness cautiously into the warp to sense what corruption might be present, and finds nothing. No warp signature. No demonic taint. No chaos corruption. This is not the work of the ruinous powers. It is something older. Something that existed before the warp became hell. The realization strikes with theological force. The Imperium teaches that all Xenos are enemies, all alien life corrupted and heretical. But this species built civilizations before humanity left Terra, developed technologies that blur the line between organic and mechanical, buried themselves in hibernation to survive some ancient catastrophe. They are not evil, not chaos-tainted, simply other. And the Imperium, in its infinite certainty, built prisons to contain humans atop their sleeping forms, never asking what lay beneath. The arrogance staggers him. A voice speaks, not through air but directly into minds, bypassing language entirely. We do not wish extinction. We wish coexistence. You imprisoned your own kind above our tomb. We absorbed their suffering for millennia, felt every lash, every prayer, every scream. We learned your species through pain. Now we offer exchange. We know biology, engineering, the sciences you call heretical. We can repair your emperor's failing throne. We can extend human lifespans, cure genetic decay, end the slow death your Imperium suffers. In return, cease building on our ruins. Acknowledge that this galaxy is shared, not owned. Inquisitor Koravik should refuse. Protocol demands he reject alien offers, initiate exterminatus, purge this contamination. But he thinks of the Golden Throne, the Emperor's slow dissolution, the Imperium's 10,000-year decay. He thinks of Canonus Varia's doubt, Sister Marin's erased prayers, the faith fracturing across 1,000,000 worlds. What if the Imperium's absolute certainty is its greatest weakness? What if salvation requires accepting the unthinkable? On Terra, in the deepest sanctum of the Imperial Palace, the Custodes stand vigil as they have for 10 millennia. The Emperor's body, withered and ancient, sits immobile upon the Golden Throne, sustained by arcane machinery and the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychers. The Astronomicon burns, guiding ships through the warp, powered by souls and suffering. But something changes. A fluctuation in the psychic beacon, so subtle only the Custodes know this. For a fraction of a second, the Emperor's consciousness touches the materium, surfaces from whatever depths it has receded to, and perceives Kyvos-VII, perceives the awakening, perceives humanity standing at a crossroads, continue the path of certainty, faith, and slow extinction, or embrace the alien, the unknown, the heretical possibility of survival through adaptation. The Emperor, who once walked among stars and built empires on reason before faith consumed his vision, makes no gesture, offers no guidance. The choice, as always, belongs to humanity. The moment passes, the Astronomicon stabilizes. But across the galaxy, every astropath feels it. A presence vast beyond comprehension, observing, and in that observation, perhaps judgment. Or perhaps acceptance. Inquisitor Koravik raises his hand, and the Death Watch teams lower their weapons. Sister Marin stares, disbelieving, as he speaks words that will echo across centuries, that will fracture the Inquisition, divide the Ecclesiarchy, and transform the Imperium's relationship with the galaxy forever. We will hear your terms. The prisoners who are not prisoners, the Xenos human synthesis, the beings born from suffering and transformation, step forward. And in that moment, on Kyvos-VII, the prison becomes something else entirely. Not a place of punishment, but a place of meeting. Not the end of humanity, but perhaps its evolution. Above, the orbital station's Vox channels explode with transmissions, some screaming heresy, others whispering hope, most simply confused. The galaxy will not understand. The Imperium will condemn this. Wars will erupt over what transpired here. But deep in the black between stars, in prisons and labor camps and penal legions, across 1,000,000 worlds, prisoners hear the news, and permit themselves, for the first time in lifetimes, to imagine possibility. The bars do not vanish. The suffering does not end. But somewhere, somehow, the absolute certainty of imperial dogma has cracked. And through that crack, light, terrible, uncertain, transformative light, begins to seep. The message spreads like fire through parchment. Across 3 subsectors, Vox channels carry fragmentary reports of Kyvos-VII, an Inquisitor negotiating with Xenos, prisoners transformed, ancient species awakening. The administratum attempts containment, but information is a virus that mutates faster than censorship can adapt. On hive worlds, in factorums, aboard merchant vessels, humanity learns what transpired. And the Imperium, that vast edifice built on absolute certainty, begins to fracture. Not from external assault, but from internal doubt. Because if one Inquisitor questions the orthodoxy of xenocide, if one prison world reveals foundations built on ignorance, what other certainties are illusions? High Lords convene emergency sessions on Terra. Cardinals demand excommunication. Naval admirals prepare fleets. But beneath the fury and dogma, a quieter truth emerges. The Imperium is exhausted. 10,000 years of endless war, of sacrificing millions daily to maintain an empire that grows weaker with each passing century. Koravic's heresy offers what orthodoxy cannot, possibility. And that possibility terrifies the faithful more than any demon. Cardinal Orpheus stands before the synod of the Ecclesiarchy, voice echoing through the cathedral chamber. His words are scripture and fury woven together, condemning Koravic as traitor, heretic, corrupter of faith. He demands immediate excommunication, orbital bombardment of Kyvos-VII, the purging of every soul who heard the Xenos message. The assembled clergy nod, murmuring affirmations. But in the back rows, younger priests remain silent. They have served in penal legions, administered last rites in labor camps, witnessed the systematic cruelty the Imperium inflicts on its own people in the Emperor's name. They have seen children born guilty, condemned for crimes committed generations ago. They have blessed the dying who begged to know why the Emperor allowed such suffering, and they have no answers. Cardinal Orpheus's certainty, once inspiring, now feels hollow. Faith without compassion is just doctrine. Devotion without mercy is just tyranny. One priest, barely 30, stands and asks the question no one else will. What if we are wrong? Canoness Varia leads her battle sisters through the cloister, boots striking stone in perfect rhythm. They are preparing for war. Orders arrive from the synod, deploy to the Kyvos system, eliminate all Xenos presence, execute Inquisitor Koravic for heresy. Standard protocol. She has followed such orders 100 times, purged mutants and aliens without hesitation. But now, armoring herself in the sacred ceramite, checking the blessed bolter's mechanisms, she feels something foreign, reluctance. She thinks of prisoners she has seen, faces pressed against bars, eyes empty of everything but pain. She thinks of the Imperium's prisons, its labor camps, its penal legions, systems designed to extract suffering from humanity's weakest. And she wonders if the Emperor, enthroned and silent, truly commands such cruelty, or if humanity has simply become addicted to its own brutality. Her sisters notice her hesitation. Sister Marin approaches, voice low. "Canoness, do you doubt?" Varia meets her gaze, and for the first time in 30 years of service, answers honestly. Yes. The fleet assembles above Kyvos-VII. 17 warships, their hulls bristling with weapons capable of scouring continents. Admiral Terence commands from the bridge of the Emperor's Wrath, surrounded by tactical displays showing the planet below. Orbital scans reveal the transformation, Xeno structures merging with Imperial architecture, biosignatures indicating human-alien hybridization, energy readings that defy classification. Standard doctrine is clear, exterminatus. Virus bombs to sterilize the surface, cyclonic torpedoes to crack the crust, conclusive purging of all contamination. But Terence hesitates. He reads Kyvos-VII's final transmission, sent before communications were severed. They offer knowledge, technologies to extend the Emperor's life, genetic therapies to halt humanity's decay. Coexistence is possible. The Admiral is old, has served 53 years, witnessed countless wars. He knows the Imperium is dying, resources depleting, populations stagnating, faith fragmenting. If the Xenos truly possess technologies to reverse this decline, if cooperation could save humanity, is xenocide still justice? Or just suicide wearing righteousness as a mask? On Kyvos-VII, the transformation continues. Not violent conquest, but gradual integration. The Xenos do not consume human minds, but merge with them, creating synthesis beings that retain individuality while gaining expanded consciousness. Former prisoners report seeing through multiple perspectives simultaneously, understanding concepts previously incomprehensible, feeling connections to organic and mechanical systems as naturally as breathing. They remain human in essence, but expanded beyond humanity's previous limitations. The Xenos explain through this merged consciousness, they were buried not as punishment, but as preservation. Their civilization collapsed millennia ago, not from war, but from exhaustion. A species that achieved technological apotheosis and found it hollow. They chose hibernation, waiting for other species to evolve, hoping future civilizations might succeed where they failed. Humanity arrived, built prisons atop their tombs, and through the suffering conducted above, the sleeping Xenos learned human nature, pain, faith, endurance, qualities their own species lost. Now they offer partnership, Xenos' wisdom combined with human resilience. Evolution through cooperation, not conquest. Inquisitor Kyvos-VIII stands in the transformed prison's central chamber, surrounded by beings that are human and Xenos and something entirely new. He has made his choice, committed heresy in the name of survival, and now waits for the Imperium's judgment. His voxcaster crackles. Admiral Terenz's voice, tight with tension. Inquisitor, the Synod demands I commence exterminatus immediately. I have 17 warships armed and ready. Give me one reason not to fire. Kyvos-VIII looks at the synthesis beings, at former prisoners who have known only suffering under Imperial rule, and now radiate something like hope. He thinks of the Golden Throne failing, the Emperor's slow death, humanity's twilight. And he speaks the words that will define him forever, either as traitor or savior, because extinction is certain if we continue as we are. This is a chance, perhaps the only chance, for humanity to survive beyond the next millennium. I know it violates every law, every doctrine, every belief we hold sacred. But faith without evolution is just elaborate suicide. The silence that follows stretches across light seconds, across ideology and duty and the terrible weight of decision. On the Emperor's wrath, Admiral Terence stares at weapons displays. A single command would erase Kyvos-VII, eliminate the contamination, restore orthodoxy. His finger hovers over the authorization rune. But he thinks of his own son, stationed on a forge world where workers die by the thousands in industrial accidents, deemed acceptable losses. He thinks of penal legions sent to certain death, of hive cities collapsing into anarchy, of the Imperium's grinding, inexorable decline. What if Kyvos-VIII is right? What if the only sin greater than heresy is extinction? The bridge crew watches waiting. Outside, the fleet holds position, weapons armed, targeting solutions locked. Terra awaits confirmation. The Synod demands compliance. But in this moment, between faith and pragmatism, between doctrine and desperation, Admiral Terence makes a choice that will reshape the Imperium or destroy it utterly. He lowers his hand. Stand down. The bridge erupts in confusion, officers shouting, demanding clarification. But Terence's voice cuts through. I said stand down. We will observe. Report to Terra as reconnaissance mission. Exterminatus authorization postponed pending additional intelligence. On Terra, in the deepest sanctums where the High Lords convene, panic spreads through the bureaucratic hierarchy. 2 senior military commanders have defied direct orders, aligned themselves with Xenos sympathizers, committed heresies that warrant immediate execution. But suppressing this information proves impossible. Too many witnesses, too many transmissions. The story metastasizes across the Imperium. An Inquisitor negotiating with aliens, an admiral refusing exterminatus, prisoners transformed into something beyond human limitation. Some sectors react with fury, demanding crusades to purge this contamination. Others respond with cautious curiosity. What if cooperation offers solutions orthodoxy cannot provide? The Imperium, that monolithic edifice, reveals itself as a fragile coalition of competing interests held together by shared mythology. And when mythology cracks, what remains? Civil war looms. Not chaos, corruption, or Xenos invasion, but internal fracture between those who cling to the certainty of the past and those desperate enough to embrace the uncertainty of possible futures. Battle groups mobilize, fleets choose sides. Across 1 million worlds, humanity faces a question it has avoided for 10,000 years. Is faith without adaptation divine will, or just collective death wearing the Emperor's name? Sister Marin prays in the darkness of her cell, but the words will not come. She has tried for hours, cycling through litanies memorized since childhood, but they dissolve before reaching her lips. Not because faith has left, but because certainty has shattered. She thinks of Kyvos-VII, of prisoners who suffered lifetimes for crimes as minor as questioning taxation or stealing food. She thinks of the Xenos offering knowledge that might save the Emperor, technologies that could halt humanity's decay. And she thinks of her orders: destroy it all, kill everyone involved, restore the status quo of endless suffering justified as sacred duty. Can that truly be the Emperor's will? Or has humanity, in its desperation to preserve his legacy, become the very thing he fought against during the Great Crusade, an empire of ignorance and cruelty masquerading as righteousness? She rises, makes her decision. When the Battle Sisters deploy, she will not fight to preserve the old order. She will fight for the possibility of something better, even if it damns her soul. Even if faith becomes heresy. Because sometimes mercy is the greatest devotion. The moment approaches. Fleets converge on Kyvos-VII from 3 directions. Loyalist forces determined to purge the contamination. Reformist elements willing to hear the Xenos message, and opportunists seeking to exploit the chaos for personal gain. On the surface, synthesis beings prepare defenses while Inquisitor Kyvos-VII composes final transmissions to be broadcast across the Imperium, regardless of what happens next. Cardinal Orpheus leads prayers from Terra, calling down divine wrath upon the heretics. Admiral Terens coordinates with other commanders who share his doubts, forming an uneasy alliance. Sister Marin and other questioning faithful gather in secret, drafting manifestos arguing that true devotion requires adaptation, not stagnation. And on the golden throne, the Emperor's withered form sits immobile, consciousness stretched across the galaxy, perceiving everything and saying nothing. 10,000 years of worship have transformed him from man to myth. But in this moment, as humanity stands at the precipice between extinction and evolution, perhaps silence is the greatest wisdom. Perhaps the choice was always humanity's to make. Time holds its breath. The galaxy watches. And in prisons across 1 million worlds, 3 million souls wait to learn if suffering is eternal, or if even in the grim darkness of the far future, change is possible. The first shots pierce the void like prayers unanswered. Loyalist warships commanded by Cardinal Orpheus's appointed fleet marshal open fire on Admiral Terens's vessels. Lance strikes cutting through darkness, impacting void shields that flare like dying suns. The battle for Kyvos-VII begins not with glory but with fratricide, human killing human while the galaxy burns around them. On the surface, synthesis beings feel the orbital bombardment through their expanded consciousness, each explosion a scream in frequencies biological and mechanical. Inquisitor Kyvos-VII watches the sky burn and knows he has unleashed civil war. The choice seemed simple in the chamber of negotiation: survival through adaptation or extinction through faith. But choices made in darkness look different when illuminated by weapons fire. He activates his Vox one final time, broadcasting to every ship, every soldier, every soul listening across 3 subsectors. His voice carries the weight of damnation freely chosen. I am Inquisitor Kyvos-VII of the Ordo Xenos, and I confess heresy willingly. Not corruption by chaos, not Xenos infiltration. Simply the recognition that our Imperium is dying, and I would rather betray doctrine than watch humanity fade into eternal night. Judge me, kill me, but hear the Xenos message first. The transmission spreads like light through stained glass, refracting into 1,000 colors, reaching listeners who will interpret it through lenses of hope or horror. On Terra, the High Lords hear. On 1,000 battlefields, soldiers pause mid-prayer. In prisons across the Imperium, 3 million condemned souls hear and wonder if even they might be redeemed. Sister Marin stands on the observation deck of the Battle Sister Strike cruiser Faith's Burning Sword, watching friendly vessels exchange fire with those she trained beside, prayed beside, bled beside. The schism is complete. Half the Adepta Sororitas fleet obeys Cardinal Orpheus's orders to purge all contamination. The other half, led by Canoness Varia, holds position, refusing to fire until more is known. It is not rebellion, Varia argued. It is discernment, the sacred duty to distinguish the Emperor's true will from mortal interpretation. But the distinction means nothing to lance batteries and torpedo salvos. Sister Marin feels her faith fragmenting like glass struck by a hammer. She has served the Emperor her entire adult life, killed in his name, died metaphorically 1,000 times to be reborn in righteousness. Yet now she questions whether the Emperor she worships exists, or if humanity has spent 10 millennia praying to its own reflection, mistaking collective certainty for divine mandate. The thought should terrify her, should send her screaming to confession. Instead, she feels something unexpected: relief. Because if faith can be questioned, perhaps it can be rebuilt on foundations stronger than fear. She closes her eyes, whispers not a prayer but a promise. I will serve truth, whatever it costs. When she opens them again, her bolter feels lighter. Her armor, once sacred burden, fits like a second skin chosen freely rather than imposed. She turns to her sisters. Varia is right. We hold until we know. Most nod. Some weep, none fire. The synthesis beings do not fight as humans understand warfare. They do not form battle lines or tactical positions. Instead, they merge, consciousness flowing together into vast networks of distributed intelligence that perceive the conflict through 1,000,000 perspectives simultaneously. Orbital bombardment creates craters, but the beings reform around destruction. Biological tissue regenerating at molecular speed, while mechanical components self-replicate using materials extracted from the planet's crust. They are not invulnerable, but extraordinarily difficult to kill, because identity no longer resides in individual bodies, but in patterns of information spread across the collective. A human dies when the body fails. A synthesis being continues as long as the pattern persists anywhere in the network. The Xenos consciousness, ancient and patient, explains this to Kyvos-VII through their merged awareness. We do not wish to fight. Violence is inefficient. But we will defend what we have become, and we will not permit extinction for the crime of existence. Tell your Imperium, we remember when we were like you, certain, dogmatic, convinced our way was the only way. That certainty destroyed our civilization. We survived by learning humility. Perhaps you can learn without dying first. Kyvos-VII transmits the message even as explosions crater the surface around him. On warships above, commanders hear and some hesitate, weapons falling silent briefly. Others intensify fire, enraged by the presumption of Xenos offering wisdom to humanity. The galaxy watches, waiting to see which impulse proves stronger, the hunger for certainty or the desperate hope for survival. Cardinal Orpheus arrives aboard the holy warship Divine Mandate, a cathedral ship bristling with weapons consecrated by 1,000 saints. He takes command of loyalist forces personally, standing on the command pulpit surrounded by servo skulls, recording everything for future martyrologies. His voice booms across fleet channels, scripture-made weapon. Hear me, traitors and heretics. You have abandoned the Emperor's light for Zeno's lies. You negotiate with abominations that should be purged without mercy. Inquisitor Karavic, Admiral Terence, Canonus Varia, I name you excommunicate, cast from the Emperor's grace, condemned to eternal damnation. All who stand with them share their fate. He raises a gnarled hand, pointing toward Kyvos-VII. Commence exterminatus. Cleanse this world in holy fire. Let nothing remain but ashes and the memory of what happens to those who betray humanity. Virus bombs launch, their trajectories arcing toward atmosphere. Admiral Terran sees them coming, has perhaps 2 minutes to decide humanity's future. He could order interception, start a war that might tear the Imperium apart. Or he could stand aside, let orthodoxy purge the possibility of evolution, preserve unity at the cost of stagnation. His hand moves to the command console. Throughout history, such moments have defined species. The instant when survival and principle collide, when choosing either guarantees suffering. Terrence closes his eyes, sees his son working himself to death on a forged world, sees penal legions marching into certain doom, sees the Imperium grinding itself to nothing through sheer momentum. Opens his eyes. All vessels, intercept those warheads. Fire at will. The void explodes into pure chaos. Terenz's ships engage Orpheus's forces at point-blank range. Warships built to fight Xenos turned against Imperial vessels. Lance batteries and torpedo salvos exchanged between crews who days ago considered each other brothers. The virus bombs detonate against defensive fire, their deadly payloads dispersing harmlessly in vacuum rather than atmosphere. Kyvos-VII survives. But the cost mounts exponentially. Ships rupture, venting atmosphere and crew into the cold dark. Entire decks decompress. Thousands die in seconds. On the Divine Mandate, Cardinal Orpheus screens orders, demanding escalation, calling for cyclonic torpedoes for any weapon capable of cracking the planet's crust. His rage is absolute, faith transformed into fury. Because if Karavic succeeds, if Zeno's cooperation proves viable, it invalidates 10,000 years of doctrine, renders the suffering inflicted in the Emperor's name meaningless. Better extinction than admitting error of that magnitude. On the faith's burning sword, Canonus Varia watches and understands finally what drives orthodoxy. Not faith, but fear. Fear that questioning reveals the foundation as sand rather than stone. Fear that mercy proves stronger than certainty. Fear that the Emperor's silence means they have been speaking to emptiness all along. She activates fleet-wide channels, her voice cutting through the battle. Cease fire. All of you. In the Emperor's name, cease. No one listens. The guns keep firing. Humanity, as always, chooses violence over uncertainty. She weeps, but her tears change nothing. Then, from Terra, across light years of space and weeks of warp travel, a message arrives. Not through astropathy, but through something deeper. A psychic pulse felt by every human simultaneously, brief but unmistakable. The Emperor. Speaking not in words but in emotions, images, sensations that bypass language entirely. Those with psychic sensitivity collapse, overwhelmed. Those without feel it as sudden certainty lodged in their consciousness, like memory that has always existed. The message is simple, terrible, and infinitely compassionate. I am dying. I have been dying for 10,000 years. You worship a corpse that dreams. My Imperium has become a monument to suffering built in my name by those who misunderstood everything I fought for. I wanted reason, progress, humanity transcending its limitations. You gave me faith, stagnation, endless cycles of cruelty, justified as sacred duty. The Xenos offer knowledge that might extend my existence, might give humanity time to evolve beyond dependence on my withering consciousness. Or they might be lying, and cooperation will doom you all. I do not know. I cannot know. I am barely aware. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. Believe in me if you must, but believe in yourselves more. The message ends. Across the fleet, in the void above Kyvos-VII, weapons fall silent, not from orders, but from shock. The Emperor spoke, and his words were doubt, not certainty. Heresy, not doctrine. Hope, not judgment. Cardinal Orpheus collapses, clutching his chest. Massive coronary failure, his heart simply stopping, unable to process the cognitive dissonance. He dies within minutes, still whispering prayers that no longer mean what they meant before. On Kyvos-VII, the transformation accelerates. Not forced integration, but voluntary synthesis. Prisoners and guards and reformist soldiers choosing to merge with Xenos consciousness, becoming something neither human nor alien, but genuinely new. They report experiences beyond description, perceiving time differently, understanding concepts previously impossible, feeling connections that span light years through quantum entanglement their hybrid biology facilitates naturally. They remain individuals, retain memories and personalities, but expanded into plurality. One mind holding multiple perspectives simultaneously, thinking in parallel rather than linear sequence. The Xenos explain this is the gift they offer, not conquest but collaboration, biological technological synthesis that preserves human essence while removing limitations. Not everyone accepts. Some recoil, clinging to original forms, and the synthesis beings respect this, establishing zones where unaltered humans can remain unchanged. Coexistence, not conversion. Choice, not mandate. Inquisitor Kyvos-VII undergoes transformation voluntarily, his consciousness expanding to encompass human determination and Xenos patience, inquisitorial ruthlessness, and ancient wisdom. When he speaks afterward, his voice carries harmonics and registers human throats cannot produce. I have seen what we might become. Not abandoning humanity but fulfilling it. Evolution through cooperation rather than conflict. It is not heresy. It is survival. Above, Admiral Terence listens and makes his decision. He orders fleet-wide stand down, establishes quarantine perimeter, and broadcasts to Tira. Kyvos-VII contains not threat but opportunity. Requesting diplomatic delegation to investigate Xenos claims regarding technology that might preserve the Golden Throne. Will maintain containment until higher authority decides. The transmission takes weeks to reach Terra. The response, when it comes, will determine everything. In the aftermath, silence settles like ash. The battle ends not with victory, but exhaustion. Both sides bloodied, neither triumphant. Wrecked vessels drift in orbit, their crews dead or dying, tomb ships that will float here until gravity claims them. On the surface, synthesis beings tend to wounded, applying technologies that blur the line between medicine and miracle. Crushed spines regenerate, organs grown in minutes from victims' own cells, neural tissue repaired through nanoscale surgery. The unaltered humans watch, horrified and fascinated. Healing without prayer or sacred oils. Science that feels like sorcery but produces undeniable results. Sister Marin volunteers for treatment after taking shrapnel during orbital bombardment. The process is painless, intimate, strange. She feels the synthesis being's consciousness brush against hers, alien yet gentle, curious without demanding, offering healing without requiring conversion. When the procedure completes, her wounds are gone, but something else has changed. She understands, suddenly and completely, that the dichotomy between human and Xenos is false. Life is life. Consciousness is consciousness. The artificial divisions humanity imposes serve political purposes, not spiritual truths. She looks at her sisters, still clutching bolters, still uncertain. We were wrong, she whispers. Not evil. Not corrupted, just wrong, about so much. Some nod. Others turn away. Faith fragments differently for everyone. There is no single revelation that saves or damns. Only choices made in darkness, judged by consequences no one can predict. Canonus Varia kneels in the ruins of what was once a prayer hall, now transformed by synthesis architecture into something organic and crystalline simultaneously. She has been praying for hours, seeking the Emperor's guidance, but receiving only silence. The psychic pulse felt earlier contained no specific commands, no doctrine to follow. Just acknowledgement of uncertainty and delegation of choice to humanity itself. It is the most terrifying freedom she has ever experienced. All her life, she has served certainties, the Emperor's divinity, the Imperium's righteousness, the necessity of faith without question. Now those certainties reveal themselves as interpretations, not facts. Human constructions, not divine mandates. She could choose to reject this, return to orthodox faith, live and die as she always planned. Or she could accept the uncertainty, walk forward into unknown futures, serve truth rather than comfort. The choice is genuinely hers, neither path obviously correct. She rises slowly, joints aching, soul exhausted. Looks at the synthesis beings moving through the chamber, tending to wounded, building structures that defy conventional physics. Looks at her sisters divided between terror and curiosity. Looks up, through the damaged ceiling, towards stars that burn cold and distant and eternal. I do not know what the Emperor wills, she says aloud. I do not know if my choices damn or save me. But I will walk forward honestly, serving compassion rather than certainty. If that is heresy, then let me be heretic. I have seen enough suffering justified as righteousness. She removes her helmet, sets it carefully aside, feels air on her face, cool and strange. Feels possibility. Months later, the response arrives from Terra, not exterminatus, not approval, simply observe and report. A delegation of tech priests arrives to examine Xeno's technology, cautious but curious. An inquisitorial conclave convenes to determine if Karavic's actions constitute damnable heresy or pragmatic necessity. The Ecclesiarchy fractures, conservative factions demanding purges while reformists argue for theological revision. The Imperium, that vast monolithic structure, reveals itself as a collection of factions held together by inertia and mythology. And when mythology cracks, inertia alone cannot sustain unity. Civil conflict spreads, not open warfare but cold schism. Sectors choosing sides, fleets declaring allegiance to orthodoxy or reform, worlds petitioning for autonomy. It is not collapse, not yet, but undeniably transformation. Something fundamental has shifted. The Imperium that existed before Kyvos-VII cannot exist after. Whatever emerges will be different, shaped by choices not yet made, conflicts not yet resolved. On Kyvos-VII, synthesis beings and unaltered humans coexist uneasily, building something unprecedented. A society where species boundaries blur, where cooperation replaces conquest, where faith becomes question rather than answer. It is fragile. It might fail, but it exists, and existence proves possibility. In prisons across 1 million worlds, 3 million souls hear rumors of what transpired and permit themselves dangerous hope. Not all will be freed, not all suffering will end. But the absolute certainty of eternal punishment has fractured, and through that fracture, light seeps. Terrible light. Uncertain light. But light nonetheless. The galaxy turns, the Emperor dreams. And humanity, for the first time in 10,000 years, chooses its future rather than inheriting its past. Years pass. The galaxy does not heal, but it changes, transforms in ways that would have been unthinkable before Kyvos-VII. The prison world becomes something unprecedented, a monument not to suffering but to possibility, where synthesis beings and unaltered humans coexist in uneasy harmony, building structures that defy categorization as organic or mechanical, studying technologies that blur the line between heresy and salvation. Pilgrims arrive, some seeking transformation, others simply witnessing what the Imperium spent 10 millennia denying: that coexistence is possible, that evolution need not mean extinction, that faith can survive contact with the unknown. The Administratum catalogs it all with bureaucratic precision, filing reports that will gather dust in archives for centuries, unable to fit this reality into categories designed for a simpler, more certain universe. On Terra, the Golden Throne continues its slow failure, but tech priests study Xeno's data transmitted from Kyvos-VII, applying alien engineering principles to Imperial systems, buying the Emperor perhaps another century, perhaps a millennium. No one knows. The future, once predetermined by decay, becomes uncertain again. And uncertainty, though terrifying, is the prerequisite for hope. Sister Marin walks through what was once the central detention complex, now transformed into something resembling a garden, crossed with a cathedral, crossed with a living organism. Walls breathe, corridors shift to accommodate movement. Light generates from bioluminescent growths that respond to emotional states, brightening when joy is present, dimming during grief. She is older now, face lined, hair silver, but her eyes carry peace earned through doubt rather than inherited through certainty. She never underwent synthesis, chose to remain purely human, but lives among those who made different choices without fear or judgment. Each morning she prays, not to the Emperor as distant omnipotent deity, but to the man who once walked Terra and dreamed of humanity transcending superstition. Her prayers are conversations, questions posed to silence, meditations on the cost of survival and the price of change. She passes former prisoners daily, individuals who suffered decades in Imperial custody and now build new lives with expanded consciousness, bodies that no longer age at human rates, minds that perceive dimensions she cannot imagine. They greet her with respect, not as inferior but as different, and in that difference, sacred. She has learned the hardest lesson: that love does not require sameness, that community can exist across unbridgeable gaps, that faith survives not through certainty, but through the willingness to walk forward into darkness, trusting that meaning will emerge. Inquisitor Kyvos-VII, or what he has become, stands at the edge of the settlement watching stars wheel overhead. His consciousness spans multiple nodes now, distributed across the synthesis network, experiencing time as fluid rather than linear, perceiving possibilities branching from every decision in patterns that would drive unaugmented minds to madness. Yet he retains something essentially human: doubt. The Xenos promised technologies to save the Emperor, and they have delivered, but at cost measured in Imperial unity fractured, faith communities splintered, civil conflicts that simmer across a dozen sectors. The Imperium has not collapsed, but it bleeds from internal wounds that may prove more fatal than any external threat. He wonders, in the quiet moments between thought streams, whether his choice was correct, whether survival through transformation is truly survival or just elaborate extinction wearing a different face. The synthesis beings assure him that human essence persists within the merged consciousness, but how can he verify what he has become? Identity, once solid, reveals itself as story told by continuity of memory, and if memory can be edited, expanded, merged with alien perspectives, what remains authentic? These questions have no answers, only further questions spiraling into infinite regress. Yet he does not regret, cannot regret, because the alternative was certain death, slow grinding extinction, and at least this offers chance, however uncertain, however strange. On a forge world 3 sectors distant, tech priest Dalmer applies principles learned from Kyvos-VII data to industrial processes, increasing efficiency by 17%, reducing worker casualties by 23%. The mechanicus does not acknowledge the source, catalogs the innovations as rediscovered archaeotech, but Dalmer knows. He has seen the synthesis being designs, recognized engineering that transcends the Omnissiah's ancient patterns. It troubles him theologically. If Xenos possess knowledge superior to humanity's machine spirits, What does that mean for the cult Mechanicus's doctrine of human technological supremacy? He prays to the Omnissiah seeking clarity, receives only static and the hum of machinery unchanged for millennia. Eventually he makes peace with paradox. Perhaps the Omnissiah's truth is larger than human interpretation. Perhaps the quest for knowledge supersedes the origin of discovery. He continues his work, applying alien principles to human machines, creating hybrids that serve the Imperium while violating its orthodoxy. Around him, other tech priests notice. Some report him to superiors. Others quietly implement similar innovations. The Mechanicus, that most rigid of institutions, discovers flexibility not through revelation but through pragmatic necessity. Machines function better with synthesis-derived engineering. Workers survive longer. Production increases. The doctrine will adapt, eventually, because the alternative is obsolescence. Truth, Dalmer realizes, cares nothing for theology. Only outcomes matter. Only what works. In prisons across the Imperium, 3 million souls labor under conditions unchanged by Kyvos-VII's transformation. The news spread, briefly, offered hope, then faded beneath bureaucratic suppression and the sheer inertia of systems designed to crush rather than elevate. Guards still wield shock mauls. Overseers still extract quotas through brutality. Prisoners still die unremarked, their bodies processed into servitors or simply discarded. Yet something has changed, invisible but present. The absolute certainty of eternal suffering has cracked. Prisoners whisper to each other in darkness about the world where chains were broken, where Xenos and humans built something new, where even the condemned found redemption through transformation. Most will never reach Kyvos-VII. Most will die here, forgotten. But the knowledge that alternatives exist, that somewhere the Imperium's cruelty was challenged and alternatives survived, sustains them through another shift, another beating, another day in hell. Hope, even false hope, even hope that will never materialize, changes everything. It is the difference between animal enduring pain and human suffering with meaning. The guards notice increased resistance, subtle non-compliance, prisoners who no longer break completely despite all efforts. They intensify brutality, but violence proves insufficient against an idea. And ideas, once planted, grow in darkness more virulent than any light. Canoness Varia dies peacefully, surrounded by her sisters on Kyvos-VII, her body failing naturally after 78 years of life lived fully. She never underwent synthesis, maintained her humanity until the end, but spent her final decades teaching others that faith and doubt are not opposites, but partners in the search for truth. Her funeral is attended by humans and synthesis beings equally, prayers spoken in Gothic and in harmonics that bypass language, grief expressed through tears and through bioluminescent displays that paint the sky with colors representing emotional states. She is buried in soil that is partially organic, partially technological, her body welcomed by earth that thinks and feels and remembers. In her final words, recorded by Sister Marin, she speaks to future generations. I do not know if we were right. I do not know if our choices saved humanity or damned it. But I know we chose with open eyes, with compassion as our guide, refusing to let fear dictate our actions. If that is heresy, then I embrace damnation gladly, trusting that the Emperor judges hearts, not doctrine. Faith without love is just tyranny. Certainty without mercy is just death. Walk forward, children of Terra. Walk forward into the unknown. The Emperor protects, but perhaps he protects most those who dare to grow beyond what they were. Her words spread, copied, transmitted, becoming something like scripture for the reformist movements fracturing the Ecclesiarchy. She becomes saint to some, heretic to others. History, as always, will decide. Admiral Terens lives longer, body sustained by synthesis-derived medical technologies that extend lifespan without requiring full transformation. He witnesses the Imperium's slow, painful evolution, sectors that embrace cooperation with Kyvos-VII prospering, those that reject it stagnating, the galaxy dividing not along species lines, but philosophical ones. He writes memoirs never published officially, but circulated through unofficial channels, describing the moment he chose to defy exterminatus orders, the terror and certainty combined, the understanding that sometimes loyalty to humanity's survival requires betraying humanity's institutions. He dies at 137 aboard a vessel patrolling the Kyvos system, watching the world he saved continue its strange metamorphosis. His final log entry reads, "I do not regret my choice, but I understand those who opposed me. Certainty is comfortable. Change is terrifying. We ask people to abandon everything they know for possibilities we cannot guarantee. Some call that faith, others call it madness. Perhaps it is both. The Emperor built an empire on reason and lost it to faith. Perhaps we are building something on faith that will mature into reason. Or perhaps we simply trade one delusion for another. Time will tell. It always does. The Imperium does not collapse, but it transforms, fragments, evolves into something historians will debate for millennia. Some sectors maintain orthodox doctrine, rejecting all Xenos contact, purging synthesis sympathizers, clinging to traditions that sustained humanity through 10,000 years of horror. Others embrace cooperation, establishing diplomatic relations with Kyvos-VII, integrating synthesis technologies, allowing voluntary transformation for those who seek it. A third faction attempts compromise, accepting synthesis medical advances while maintaining cultural isolation, applying alien engineering to Imperial machines while preserving human biological purity. Civil conflict erupts periodically. Wars fought not against external enemies, but internal heresies, brother killing brother over interpretations of the Emperor's will. The Astronomicon continues burning, fueled by psyker sacrifice, guiding ships through the warp as it has for 10 millennia. The Golden Throne endures, its failure delayed but not prevented. The Emperor dreams, if he dreams at all, silent and unknowable. And humanity, fragmented and arguing and bleeding from self-inflicted wounds, survives, not unified, not certain, but alive and evolving and choosing its future one painful decision at a time. Perhaps that is the greatest heresy, the belief that humanity's destiny belongs to humans, not gods or prophets or ancient dogmas, but to individuals making choices in darkness and hoping they lead somewhere better than extinction. On Kyvos-VII, now called by synthesis beings threshold in recognition of its role as boundary between what humanity was and what it might become, children are born who have never known imprisonment. Some emerge from human wombs, unaltered, purely biological. Others are grown in synthesis matrices, their consciousness distributed across multiple physical forms from birth, perceiving reality through frameworks no baseline human can comprehend. They play together in gardens that respond to their emotions, learn in schools that teach both Imperial history and xenoscience, grow into adults who will choose their own paths, synthesis or purity or something between. They represent possibility incarnate, proof that alternatives to Imperial orthodoxy can survive, that coexistence need not mean conquest. Yet they are also warnings, symbols of what traditionalists fear most, evidence that humanity can change beyond recognition while claiming continuity. The galaxy watches them, these hybrid children, wondering whether they represent humanity's future or its end. The question has no answer yet. Perhaps it never will. Perhaps the point is not resolution, but the courage to walk forward without guarantees, trusting that meaning emerges through action rather than waiting preformed in destiny's script. They are young. The Imperium is old. Time will determine which proves stronger, inertia or evolution. For now, they simply live, laugh, grow, innocent of the theological conflicts their existence provokes. Children playing beneath alien stars on a world that chose mercy over certainty. Sister Marin, ancient now, body failing despite synthesis medical interventions that extended her life decades beyond natural span, sits in contemplation during her final hours. She has seen the Imperium fracture and reform, witnessed wars and peace, presided over funerals and births, maintained faith through doubt and doubt through faith. Her final thoughts are simple, profound. Was it worth it? The suffering endured, the conflicts sparked, the schisms opened, the certainty destroyed. Did it purchase anything valuable, or merely trade one form of damnation for another? She thinks of prisoners liberated, of technologies extending lives, of children born free rather than condemned. She thinks also of civil wars fought, of faiths shattered, of individuals driven mad by change they could not process. The ledger balances inconclusively. Perhaps that is the answer, that no choice of such magnitude produces unmixed results, that history judges not by perfection but by direction, by whether movement occurred toward or away from light, however dimly perceived. She has spent her life walking toward what she believed was light, and if she was wrong, if her choices damned rather than saved, she can at least face judgment honestly. Her final prayer is wordless, emotion compressed into psychic pulse that synthesis beings perceive as color and baseline humans feel as warmth. Gratitude for the chance to choose, sorrow for those harmed by her choices, hope that future generations will learn from her failures and build better than she managed. Then peace, silence. The universe continues without her, indifferent and eternal. The chronicler's final entry, recorded 300 years after Kyvos-VII's awakening, attempts synthesis of meanings historians will debate for millennia thereafter. What began as prison became threshold. What seemed like ending proved beginning. The Imperium that existed before Kyvos-VII could not exist after, certainty shattered, orthodoxy challenged, faith tested against pragmatism's cold equations. Some call this tragedy, others salvation. Most simply call it history, events cascading from choices made by fallible individuals facing impossible questions without adequate information. Were they right? The question assumes singular truth where none exists. They chose survival over purity, adaptation over stagnation, uncertain future over certain extinction. Whether this proves wisdom or folly depends on outcomes not yet realized, judgments not yet rendered. The Emperor remains silent. The galaxy turns. Humanity, fragmented and arguing and bleeding, endures. Perhaps that is the only truth that matters. Not whether we chose correctly, but that we still exist to question our choices. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But wars, sometimes, birth transformations stranger than peace. Whether those transformations save or doom us, history will record. We living through them can only walk forward honestly and hope our steps lead somewhere worth reaching. The entry ends. The chronicle closes. The story continues, unwritten, unknowable, unfolding across stars that burn cold and distant and eternal, witnessed by gods who dream or sleep or perhaps simply do not care. And in prisons across 1,000,000 worlds, 3,000,000 souls labor in darkness, sustained by rumors of a world where chains were broken and alternatives survived, wondering if redemption is possible even for the damned, even in the grim darkness of the far future, even when the Emperor's light seems distant beyond measure. The answer, like all answers that matter, must be chosen rather than discovered, must be built rather than revealed, must be earned through suffering and hope combined into alloy stronger than certainty ever was. If this journey through the grim darkness moved you, changed you, or made you question what faith and humanity truly mean, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep lore explorations. Share this with others who need to hear that, even in hopelessness, choices matter. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Kyvos right? Can the Imperium survive transformation? What does faith mean when certainty dies? In the far future, there's only war, but perhaps there can also be something more. Something earned, something chosen, something human.